You're now listening to the show about the shit in life that's just a bit too much, from the perspective of stand-up comics, with our hosts, Carmelo Bongiovi and Ken Krantz. This week's topic, we are not alone, with our guest, Sean Donnelly. This is A Bit Too Much.
Well, John, I'm drinking because I watched these documentaries that you recommended, and I'm like I'm not really okay anymore.
Well, we can get into it, man.
Yeah, let's. So it was funny is we had a moment. Ken and I were texting. He's like, Sean would like to talk about this, and he was like, by the way, you know, so the topic is UFOs, aliens, and he goes, by the way, I totally believe in UFOs, and I was like, yeah, me too. Yeah. And he goes, oh, because we had an episode about ghosts recently. He's like, you made me feel pretty dumb about ghosts recently. Because I was like, I'm like, that's not the same, you know, like just because you believe in one crazy thing doesn't mean you believe in all the crazy things.
Well, here's the thing. The ghost thing for me, I think this might do something. I think it's all related. I think the ghost thing that people think they see, I think it's physics related and we just don't know our physics. And I think it's like has to do with time, space, and all that jazz. And that's because I listen to this podcast. And Ken, you'll probably like. You ever hear the Jim Harold's Campfire podcast? It's really good.
No.
And all these people call up with their ghost stories, and it's really awesome. But yeah, so and also to give you an idea, like just like you saw these documentaries, I wasn't a UFO. I was always into it, I guess, but not this intensely until the New York Times wrote that article in 2017.
Yeah, I think that was a big eye opener for a lot of people.
Yes.
Or just makes you think for a lot of people. You know, here's what's fascinating to me is that UFOs, flying saucers, these are all words that sound like stories made up in the 50s, right? Like these are all things that are like all these words or what we think of aliens looking like with the big bulbous heads and the big black eyes,
or the grays they call them. Yeah, the grays. You
know that. So that's like that. All those things are like, oh, that's all sci-fi, right? So fictions. That's what a lot of people feel is that. And myself included, it was like, the idea of a flying saucer. Like I felt like, that was made up by somebody, like maybe a comic book writer or something, right? And then you start to take it, you listen to all these accounts. I did watch the two documentaries you recommended, Phenomenon and Moment of Contact.
Yeah.
By James Fox, right? Both of those. Yeah. And all these accounts are like of those things that you think are like, oh, if they are real, is that actually what they look like? And all these accounts are like, yeah, that's what they fucking look like.
To me, my main thing with this, I like to think of myself as a healthy skeptic. I think a lot of people think I'm wackadoo because I got so into it. But like, there's some of the stuff you hear that I'm like, that like Moment of Contact, I think that one, just so people who are listening know, it's about basically Brazil's Roswell, where these military and these people came in contact with like beings and craft that crashed, whatever it is. I actually buy into it, but I don't know what. As I watch it, I'm like, I can't get my head around this. This is for real. Like it's like, it goes against every common sense thing that you have. But the reason why I like James Fox is he's not Ancient Aliens. He's not the guy with the wacky hair going ooh. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, it's not this wackadoo guy. He just looks like a guy who makes documentaries that comes from a pretty grounded place. And the other one, he did other ones that were on YouTube before Phenomenon. But like even the Phenomenon, he did it from a military-based thing. He did it from very, very like sound, I don't know, very believable sources. Like
it is very believable in the way that it's
that's
the
what
narration.
Gets
me. If you're a skeptic, watch Phenomenon because I feel like the stereotype for people that have seen UFOs, it's always like a drunk redneck, in the Midwest, and but this is like, it's all government officials. It's all people that you can Google and like, oh no, these were real.
Well, we all grew up with this idea, like somewhere along the line, anal probing came into the conversation. Like we all grew up with this idea of what like these crazy people talking about, crazy people, like in quotes, talking about abductions or moments of contact. We all had these sort of like, okay, that's clearly crazy, right? What I was thinking when I was watching Moment of Contact is like, now granted, I'm reading the subtitles this is in Brazil and he has translators with him, but like you're as a viewer, you're interpreting in subtitles, and you're like, but you could see it in their face the way they're ranting. They do seem a little crazy, right? Because this event is, if you believe in it, this event has driven them sort of fucking nuts. So
Right.
it also makes you think, like, how many people, even Americans, that we just go like, that crazy ass fucking redneck, that maybe a lot of them were. But
Look at
maybe.
the fire in the sky guys. That guy, whatever, Travis, whatever his name is, who that was one of the early ones too. It was back in the 70s,
Yeah.
whatever it was, or early 80s. The thing that I always go to as I've been looking into this stuff is I go to motive. So even if you take Moment of Contact as an example,
Yeah.
like what are these? Or if you look at David Fravor in The Phenomenon, the guy who saw the Tic Tac.
Yeah.
These people have way more to lose than they do to gain. How much are you making?
Why would he?
How
Yeah.
much are you really making off a documentary, if anything? I don't think he pays these people, or it's one of these things. What, so you can go run the UFO circuit,
Yeah.
like with these like pop up fairs and stuff like that. It's like these events. What are you making?
Yeah.
$500 a pop? Like how much could you?
But they're also
possibly-
not. They're not even doing that.
They're not even doing it. Exactly.
They're not even doing it. In Moment of Contact, all these people in Brazil were just like, I haven't even talked about this in a long time because I just stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
And they're distressed. They're crying.
Yeah.
Like they don't look like they even want to talk about it. Some guy threatened them to shoot them when he went
Yes.
to the house. There was that one guy that like, wait,
he was the other officer in the car, right? Wasn't he the guy in
Yeah.
the car or something like that? With the
right.
itself?
That
So here's the thing, it's like-
that apparently drove the being away. Yeah.
Even if one of the earliest things they do in the movie is James Fox just makes a placard in Portuguese and goes, "Who knows anything about it?" Because it wasn't that long ago; it was '90s, and like multiple people stop and they're like, "Yeah, that happened. Yeah, it happened. It just happened." When you go to
Right.
like, it seems way more believable than Roswell because Roswell was a thing where it happened. The government came out at first and said, "Oh, it's a disc from somewhere else. We don't know what's going on." And then the next day was like, "Nope, weather balloon, whatever it is." Then it was shelved for like 20 some odd years, if not 30 years, and then came back into popularity. But the thing about the Brazil one, the Moment of Contact episode, is that it was from like 94, I think, right? Or whatever it is, 94, and then just stayed in the lexicon of things in Brazil. But because it's Brazil, we didn't know about it until, James Fox goes after it. Like your layman, your people who don't know every single UFO occurrence don't know about this. But then, and also apparently if you go down to Cartagena, whatever it's called, it is like Roswell. Like if you go to these places, the economy of the town is they're reaping their benefits. But when
they have like touristy things about
But I don't think those three girls that saw the being in the movie. There's these three, just so people get context. There's these three. They were young girls at the time. They were sisters. They saw one of these aliens and they freaked out and they ran off. Right? They hadn't talked about it in 28 years, whatever it was. And then finally with James Fox, they talk about it. What do you think? That's the scam? They're getting supplemented or subsidized by the town because they have a UFO statue in the middle of the fucking city? No way. There's no way. That's what I mean. Like, this is just normal people. And then when it comes to the military guys, you realize they could lose their jobs, their friends, and their family. These are serious. 99% of these people are serious people.
Yeah.
It's not comedy or show business where you're like, I saw an alien and I'm going to talk about it in my one-man show, whatever it is. It's not like that. Yeah, I don't trust those. I don't trust performers. But I trust somebody who's like, I lost my friends over it,
Yeah, if some comic pretends to see or says they saw an alien and just put on a one-man show, I hope he actually does get anally probed. So all these accounts though, like if you think like from Roswell through the 2017, the 2017 story was really a 2004 incident, right?
It was a 2004 incident. That's what spurred it. But what also spurred it was the idea they were going after what the most tangible thing was, which is the group within the Department of Defense called ATIP, which was not accounted for, and had $20 million of Department of Defense money that they were spending on studying these objects. That's where that guy Lou Elizondo was involved in. It used to be called OSAP, and then it turned into ATIP, all these initials.
Sure.
Right around this time of the article, they changed it. And actually, I kind of agree. A lot of people don't agree. I think it makes more sense. In these reports, in these investigations, they're calling it UAP, not UFO, because they're like, UFO has such that pop culture take to it. And then that thing where it's like you said before, it's like the redneck pointing to the sky, whatever it is. So that UAP, and because what they realized is Like it's with their it's we're not going to say it's just an unidentified what is an unidentified anomalous whatever it is, and but the phenomena, whatever it is. Because what they realize over time is that you also have USO. These things happen above the water. These things come out of the water. They go back into the water.
Yeah, there's different
in the sky. Yeah, there's different
sort of vehicles that have aircrafts.
And these stories are endless, dude. Like I started doing a bit in my act, I closer about UFOs, where like I mentioned being divorced like 3 times.
Wait, so you're the one with the one-man show?
Yeah. It's 2 minutes long. Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned being divorced a couple times throughout the set, and then at the end, I talk about what happened, like stuff from the phenomenon, like the Nimitz thing and all this. Yeah. And then at the end, I just go way, way more bonkers, and then I say what I'm trying to say is divorce is really hard. That's whatever it is. Right. It does well. Everything from well to sometimes to like, okay, whatever, who cares?
Right.
I like doing it because I like talking about UFOs, but I've had people come multiple times. I'd be on the road and people come to me and tell me their UFO story. And I'm like, yeah, some of them I'm like, okay, that's batshit crazy. And some of them I'm like, yeah, that makes sense to me. This seems pretty on the level. You seem pretty normal. I think one thing about stand-ups that we can do is like, I think we can sniff out BS. And I think that we can tell when somebody's like kind of messing with us because, when you're talking to somebody in the crowd after the show and they give you some kind of fake story or fake answer, you can kind of tell immediately. You can read people better. And not that I'm saying it's not some sort of lie detector, but I mean like, I think you can tell who's on the level, who's not. And there's endless amounts of these stories.
And so many of the stories match up.
There's so many commonalities.
Like, there's it's like, everybody that most people who have claimed to see an alien, like, they're all describing them the same way.
Pre-internet, right? So a lot of these incidents are from a long time ago. So, you've got this group of women or just people in Brazil that really matches up very similar to like, in the Phenomenon documentary, there's this.
Oh, that school. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe.
Yeah, right. It's like the same encounter. I mean, similar, right? It's like, same description. Same description of the not the same kind of encounter because one was a crash, one was like a landing, right? Like but like the stories do. If you were like a criminal investigator, you'd be like, that's the same guy. We're seeing the patterns, and these are from all over the world. There is no way in 1994 in Brazil that they really fucking knew I don't remember which event was first or second, but like there's no way those two groups of people knew about each other's stories at that moment in time.
But you brought up a good point. I think it might have been the same year.
Yeah.
I just thought of that. I didn't even
were
think
they both?
It does seem like
these were things that were not reported on.
These things will happen in clusters. Like if you go all the way back to 1947, which is when that farmer dude and his wife got actual pictures.
McMinnville, Oregon.
Yeah. And they didn't make money off it, but back in the 40s,
the opposite probably.
This is pre-television. So it's not, so people all across the country in the 40s, they said there was 800 sightings like over the summer, over an 8-week period.
Yeah.
And they think it was because of nuclear testing.
Yeah. But they like all of you. And now listen, 800, I'm sure some people read the newspaper and some of it was, crackpots.
Yeah.
But they couldn't have been 800 people from different parts in the country, pre-internet, pre-television, that all had the same story.
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein's still a piece of shit, even if some of those stories, right? Like some of those stories, like that's always what happens with a big reported story. Like the thing in Brazil was reported in these Brazilian newspapers, but again, in Zimbabwe, they weren't reading those fucking in the same year. They didn't get that fucking story.
They didn't have LexisNexis at this day school, and they're just getting databases of UFO encounters.
Yeah. So it's like, how do those stories corroborate so well? Know?
Another thing that you brought up a great point about McMinnville. So for people who don't know, in McMinnville, Oregon, there was a couple. They were just solemn, just farmers that just working the land, and they saw a craft above their house, and then the husband ran in, got the camera, and they took pictures of the camera. The reason why I think people keep going back to that is because this is from a time where we know for sure It's not AI. Nobody's photoshopping things at this point. And to this day, that was 70 something years ago.
Yeah.
And to this day, nobody's been able to say that photo was doctored or anything done to it. That whatever was taken in that picture, nothing was moved. They went to multiple experts with the original photos. Nothing was ever manipulated about that photo. That's why all the UFO people go, then tell me what it is if this actually is in the photo. What is it? A hubcap?
Yeah. Way before a time when our instinct now would be like, okay, what is, that could be easily done with computer graphics.
Well, that's what they keep going back to. So now if you see something, even myself, like I'll see something, even if it's vetted, people go, right, good scam, whatever it is. But the joke they have now in UFO world, they go, if you see something really, it's a light that's fuzzy and it's moving around erratically. You get a video or it's a picture of a UFO. Somebody's like, I saw it. It was a UFO. Here's a picture. Like, yeah, that's just a fuzzy ball of light. And then you have another picture that's like a clear-cut UFO. They're like, hey, great Photoshop skills. Like, 'cause you can't win. Like, there's no point.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, oh my God, I'll believe that's 100%. And I'm the same way, man. Like, there was a video. I don't know. I haven't looked it up online a bit, but I was like, when I was going down the rabbit hole on YouTube videos, there was this one random video that was shot in Texas, or that's what it was listed as, and it was right after it was definitely one of these Tic Tac things. Just they had it was like 4-minute video of this thing just stationary in the sky. You're looking around.
Yeah.
There's no. It's not like it's lighting. It's not it's not like the street lights, or it's not like when they have stuff they're working on stuff, construction or anything. It's just solitary in the sky. You can see it clear as day. I saw it, watched the whole thing for 4 minutes, it just sits there, and then the video ends, or maybe even longer, like 8 minutes. Somebody just filmed it. They're like, I filmed this by my house. It had 8,000 views. I even saw it, and I'm like, that's definitely real. And I went, yeah, but how are you supposed to trust it? Like, I went like,
yeah,
there's no motive for this person to put this on for 8,000 views on YouTube and it not go anywhere. And it might not even be on YouTube anymore, but I remember being like, oh yeah, something must be up. It must be they're trying to scam. They're trying to this. That's what I mean. Like, automatically you go to, okay, but what's the rub? Like, what's the issue here?
Yeah.
And chances are, dude, that was a clear-cut shot of a Tic Tac UFO like, in the middle of Texas, just bouncing.
Right. So, and then that not Air Force. I think it was a Navy aircraft, right? It was the
Nimitz. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one of those Tic Tac described as like Tic Tac shaped things, right? But it's big. Obviously it's not Tic Tac sized. It's like
it's like 40 feet. They say like the size of a car.
Oh, 40 feet. Okay.
Not car, but they say like 40 feet long. 40 feet long.
Yeah. So like that's one. So that incident. Now I think that's what everyone was like. Oh, wait a minute, because now for me it completely changed my mindset about these things, because it's like that's a guy who's, that's like his career is on the line. His credibility is on the line. There is no fucking motivation.
Yeah, everyone goes to, I know we touched on it, everyone goes to money. And it's like, can you name one person that got rich off of claiming the CAU?
Yeah,
like, can you even, unless you watch the documentaries and you're into it, can you even name a person?
Yeah.
Right.
There's nobody raking in cash over this.
Well, the one thing you say is the guy from Ancient Aliens has probably made a good, but even that, it's like, it's on cable. Like, we're all in show business. It's a cable show. It's been on for a while. You're right.
That's a person who made a whole production. That's a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not life. It's not FU money. It's not like I'm done. It's like, it's one of these things where it's like, and that's the guy, because of that, that's the guy motive wise. I'm like, I don't buy it. They go into off on some tangents. But when it comes to stuff that this guy James Fox does, or it comes to like the New York Times being like, this group existed, and they even had way more information, but because it wasn't, they had way more stuff they could talk about, even with the Tic Tacs and all this, and they didn't, because they were like, it wasn't so, we over investigated this thing, and we still weren't sure about putting this on the front page of the New York Times, which makes me go, okay, then I just buy into it. All the people that were involved, Harry
why would the
Reid
Times report it?
All that, like, and also I think because what you have, like we said before, because what you had in the 40s, and if you believe Roswell. Now, these things, so then about when it gets to David Grush, and they have the reverse engineering program, which is supposedly called Immaculate Consolation. And this is what the one that David Grush was talking about, saying that back then, these guys all over the world, these events are happening. The U.S. is so ingrained. They show up, they grab these things, they try to reverse engineer, which is a lot of people think that's why we went from horse and buggy to artificial intelligence in 100 years, and that's never happened before ever. It's because they're using. Now, I don't know if that's true. Maybe once you get
that's fascinating. That's a fascinating theory, though. Like that. So I guess some of the if you are a believer in this, it's like, well, why aren't they sending them out? Like, I'm sure they are. They're not giving us the information, but to think that maybe some of that is the root of our technology, because it's like, it's kind of true if you think about history and technological advancements. Why is it so goddamn quick these days? Like, what, compare now. Obviously, now we're on a sort of steam engine going that way.
Right.
Oh, yeah. What's something else that brings up is in the, I guess it was the Zimbabwe one, right? Yeah. Wasn't it like these little girls?
Yeah, the Ariel school.
Yeah. So they flying saucer comes down. The aliens are standing on top of the flying saucer, and the girls are looking at them, and they're kind of just like in a Mitch McConnell trance. Like they're just like, they're like just stuck. Like the aliens are like fucking zapped them, and they're like, boom, boom, boom. Right? And they get stuck there, and they, but they're claiming they are being telepathically communicated with by these aliens. And again, that's another thing that sounds like, oh God, that's sci-fi, it's fantastical and all this stuff. But all those girls say they all got the same sort of like flashes of like the message, I think, was like that technology. We're going down the wrong path of society with technology. The only thing that makes me skeptical about that is like, if that's the message you want to deliver, why didn't they deliver it to like a president? Like, why did they go to these random 4 girls at the school? Or maybe they had more optimism than us and they think that people listen to poor kids, these like poor kids who were just like,
there was a whole thing with that, like where the critique of that was that they think that I don't see it, because if you watch the guy John Mack, who was involved in this stuff, he was involved in studying abductions. He was involved in, but this guy's he worked for Harvard. He worked
that was a Harvard dude, right?
Yeah. And he died, but he believed all this, or he thought he was like, I've been with patients for how long? These people definitely went through what they're talking about. They went through. They think he was pushing. They knew that he was a big environmental guy and a big anti-tech guy and whatever it was. And they think that he was putting his views onto the kids when he was interviewing. I think if you watch those tapes, I don't see that at all, but I'm also not a trained person in that. But really quickly about the Zimbabwe thing, before I forget, is that one thing that the phenomenon shows you, because I remember I watched videos on that case before even it was in the phenomenon, and it was just about the school. James Fox goes in and he shows you that for 3 or 4 days before that, they interviewed people. They had footage of people being like, they thought it was Jesus coming back.
Yeah.
They thought you have interviews where they're like, oh, it's the Lord and Savior, because they didn't know what it was. So it wasn't just the school that saw something prior to that event. It was like multiple people in this town in Zimbabwe saw some sort of phenomenon like 2 or 3 days prior to what happened at the school.
Yeah, they're like, you saw a fictional.
Makes sense.
They're like, you saw a fictional character, an alien. They're like, no, the fictional character Jesus.
I know. I gotta tell you, just as a Jew, the idea of Jesus coming back is so much more terrifying than an alien. Like, an alien doesn't even really scare me that much, but.
Yeah, if you're a Jew, you don't want there to be Jesus.
Right. Yeah, you want to be like, oh, we were right. Yeah. Yeah,
maybe that's the ones who know is Jews for Jesus are the ones who met the aliens and it's Jesus.
right.
Like, but hey, let's get on board now before they come back for real.
Hedging your bets.
You saying that Jesus thing though, something I haven't been able to get out of my head, like since I saw that sort of whole, I get not a press conference. I guess it was like that. What was that like where they sat down with the guy from the 2017 report? What is it? I'm too dumb to know what this is when you sit down like with.
What do you mean the
congressional hearing or?
Congressional hearing. You mean with
congressional hearing
with Fravor?
It took me a while. Me a while. I think I just Mitch McConnell. But you know what I keep on thinking is like, all right, let's say this is fucking real. They're here. They've been here for a while. But they could fucking propel at 2,000 miles per hour and get out of sight. Like so that it's when you think like, how could they stay hidden? It's like, well, if they move that fast, we have nothing that can do that, right? And it's without any fucking propulsion, or it's just like boom, gone. I keep on thinking, if this is the case, and maybe they've been here long before these Roswell and all these incidents, how many religious things may have sparked? This is like a sort of like conspiracy theory in my own head of like how many religious things may have sparked if people interacted with something from another world so many years and so many centuries ago, because they'd be like, well, what the fuck is that? In a time before we knew there was space and Earth was not just a flat piece of land, like, right?
So there's a couple of things that are related to this within this discussion. One is Tom DeLonge, which I don't know if you guys know all this, but Tom DeLonge was a very big proponent of UFOs. He's been obsessed with his whole life. Finally,
assume that we don't know half the things you know, by the way.
Isn't that the Blink 182 dude?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he full on started this thing called To the Stars Academy, where they wanted to present this narrative to people that these things are real, but done with like books and movies and shows to like kind of get it within the culture, right?
Okay.
But on the flip side of that, he had a science wing of this that had Lou Elizondo, the guy who's in, I think he's in Phenomenon, and Hal Puthoff was like a world famous physicist, and all these guys that were in there. And Jacques Vallée, who was the inspiration for the guy in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he has written multiple books about this topic. And so, but one of the things that Tom DeLonge has said in interviews is he's like. Basically, what it is it's gods with a small g. He's like, it's these things that have been going on and presenting themselves that are, like you said, they've been here longer. They seem to have way more advanced than us. They have more whatever powers it is. So people who are ancient are going to look like, even if you look at like the Greek gods or something, and like, you're right. What if they ran into one of these things? They're like, oh my God, that's all powerful. So then you start praying to that, whatever. And then in the Bible, there's a thing called Ezekiel's wheel, which there's a passage where they talk about these wheels of light that are in the sky that we're interacting with. And I think it was even a being that was inside the wheel. If you look it up, like look up Ezekiel's wheel, and you'll the wording, you're like, somebody from the Bible days must have saw something. Like it's like one of the, it's pretty on point. So this is that already happens, and people can't. But it's also like, so Jacques Vallée, one of his theories is that it's the same phenomenon this whole time, and that what it's doing is whatever it's presenting itself to humans as whatever they're going to get their heads around the best. So like for us, for the past 7 years, it's been flying discs because the age of technology. So we're like, oh my God, we're seeing this technology we can't understand. But back in the day, it was like this God type thing where it was like fairies and creatures and this, whatever it is. I don't know if that's true. I just know that's one of the theories. And the other one you touched upon was that they've been here the whole time. Because when people talk about space, they're like, there's no way they could get here. It's such a long distance to anywhere else.
Yeah.
I think it is that they're just here. I think they've just been here the entire time. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, they just saw this. They're like, let's check out that rock over there, or that big floating thing, and then they're like, oh, there's shit going on. There's like sentient life here, and let's stay. Or
that which ends up can be also partially interdimensional. So like the whole idea that like they live with us on this planet, but peripherally, like we can. We can't see them all the time, only when they want, whatever it is. So it's interdimensional is another theory with it too, which apparently is mathematically possible. Like, obviously not technologically possible.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that before. It's like there's a mathematical possibility to that. Like, yeah, so what you're saying is like that theory is saying like this is their planet in their dimension. So they're just kind of like, they're not necessarily leaving and coming back. They're here.
They're here, but in another plane. I forget how they worded it. That's another Tom DeLonge thing where he's like, they're just living side by side with us, but on whatever plane they're on, like whatever it is. And I guess so. If we're three dimensional in the fourth dimension, right? So I think it's that maybe they have the ability to, like, because it's one of those things where they also a theory I heard a while ago was like, if you're seeing, like, there could be that they're in the fifth dimension and we're only seeing them at certain times because of whatever technology they have, or because it's just like, oh, we're catching glimpses, like they use the ant analogy. Like there's a whole video about it where they go up to the 10th dimension and they're like, an ant sees like is in the third dimension, but only sees like their vision's like one dimensional. So what they see with us is like lines and shapes. Like it's not us as like a fully fledged thing.
Yeah, and we see the whole picture. Yeah.
If you're in the fifth dimension, time then, this gets very heady, but time then becomes like almost like an object in itself. So they're seeing time as like almost like a long
almost seeing it all at once.
All at once. Yeah, that's the theory. Like even if you watch Arrival is a great movie. And they talk about how time is circular, and these beings are showing you like, hey, it's all just happening all at once. And that's the other theory, that everything just happens all at once.
Yeah, it's not as linear. Which makes you doesn't that, if that idea is true, or if you believe that's possible, that they can see, like we can't see them, they can appear as they need and want, but they're really occupying the same space as us in an interdimensional way. Doesn't that make you feel like, oh God, we're so dumb compared to?
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's like we're house cats. It's like, oh, I thought my whole world was my apartment. I thought this apartment was everything that existed, and then my human just disappears every fucking day and then reappears, and it's absolutely. And they're and the human's like, no, you fucking dumb cat, I went to work. And they're probably like, no, you dumb humans, I'm right here. I can see you, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. No, we
it's like they figured out interdimensional travel, and I got to pay a dude to replace my storm door. Like I've made no, I don't evolve.
Yeah, I know. No. We're just, they're basically the singular. They're part AI, and we're just shitty animals.
Yeah, we really are. Like, if you think about that, we are just like little fucking dumb cattle. In comparison.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about the school in Zimbabwe, though, that really got me was they bring all the kids back now 20 or 30 years later to interview them, and they're still all telling the same story.
Yeah.
Yep, same story.
And their stories still match up. They brought them back to this. Yeah. And you could, and they're saying like, we don't really like talking about this. So it's not like they've made, they haven't made it their identity. So
they avoided it. If anything,
you think that an entire school full of little girls decided to make up a story at second, third, fourth graders all made up a story, and then they all stuck with it the rest of their lives as a hoax.
By the way, as a dad of a little girl, you know when your kid makes up a story because they think it's fun or funny, you know what they also love to do is rat themselves out 13 seconds later. Like they also love to be like, I was just kidding, I fucking got you. Like they would not, a child wouldn't hold on to that. You're right. In some fucking Machiavellian, I'm gonna just hold on to this, and I'm gonna fuck with you in 34 years.
Yeah, and they
that isn't how a child's mind works.
They fold under questioning so much. Like I'll call my daughter out, and I'm like, I think you're messing with me. I think you're making this up. She's like, how do you know? It's because I'm not the dumbest motherfucker who ever lived. That's how I know.
It's like when you fake took the SATs. Like it didn't take much for your
one of the other
to
ones.
Figure it out.
One of the cool moments from, I think, and it's in the phenomenon. It's when they have John Mack is there, and he's like, I believe these kids went through what they said they did. But even more importantly is like that, whatever that photographer is, the video guy, he's like, dude, I've been to war. Like he's like, I've like filmed wars and people come out of wars, and he's like, these kids are traumatized. I could tell. He goes like, I just tell in their eyes they're traumatized. So it's like,
yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, if that didn't happen, let's investigate what did, because something bad happened to them. Right?
Yeah.
Like regardless, something bad happened to them.
And it's one of these things where it's like, yes, somebody there in not the phenomenon. I think in the other documentary that I didn't see, they made a whole documentary about the Ariel School incident, and one of the boys came out and said like it was completely made up. He's like they're misremembering it. I made it up with my friend, and we came back and told everybody, and they ran over, and we just made it up. And I'm like, all right, but that's one guy saying that in 30 years, as opposed to a bunch of people that were like drew. And the other thing is drawing the picture. They all draw pretty much the same photo. I think you'd have a really different array of photos.
Yeah. You know, and I think that's just that what you just said about that guy. That's so. Both sides of this story are so like, you know, make so much sense for human nature. There's always going to be the people who are like, I just got to tell you everything I'm seeing and thinking, and then you're always going to have the naysayers who are like, you know, we know, and who's to say what side is right, but you're always going to have the other side that goes like, no, dude, I'm telling you, I know a guy who did this. Like everyone's always got the story of like how they debunk something,
right?
Or someone's always got a story of how it's true. And you know, when you think about it, it's and really this kind of could go into like, if this was the origin of religions, was like, there really is this innate thing in us to when we make up stories. Like, humans are storytellers even by mistake, and if we can't explain something,
We'll just make it up.
we just make it up, like when you made up all those ghost stories. You know, Ken goes, we saw a little girl on the stairs. I'm like, that's the little girl you keep in your house. That's don't tell the authorities about it.
You don't talk about anymore.
Yeah.
The other thing is this: we make it up, but we also like it's the thing that people go after is like they're like eyewitness testimony is so unreliable that it's like whatever it is. So but I think when you have the mass sightings are the ones that get me. That's the ones that I'm like,
right.
So you all, is it mass hysteria? You all collectively decided that you saw the same exact thing without conferring.
Yeah.
You just told them what it was. Because the other one that really gets to me, there's a couple from Phenomenon that I think is great, but one of them is the Westall incident in Australia.
Yeah.
And the one thing about Ariel School, you can say, yeah, they saw beings, but there was no adults. They ran back to the adults because they were having a meeting. That to me seems like also like, oh, if it was going to be a made up joke with the kids, that'd be a perfect time to do it because they came back to tell the teachers, and then what made the teachers got upset? They're like, well, let's pretend it actually happened. Like, you never know, right? Because there's no adults there. But the Westall incident, where these 3 craft land in a field across from this primary school in Australia, and I think in Melbourne, whatever it was, right near Melbourne, and that's part of the phenomenon, I think. That one had a mix of the kids running over the fence, so certain kids hopping the fence, then going and interacting with the craft itself, and multiple teachers saying the same exact thing. And then teachers being harassed after the fact, saying you'll lose your job, we'll affect your family, we'll do this by men and whatever figures came from. They're like, they were American. They showed up right away. They were American. And it fits into everything else.
Right. So some of like what stuck out to me as the commonalities throughout all these stories that you feel like, if this is fake, how do they all match up? Is shape of the aircrafts.
Yeah.
Looks of what these aliens look like, which is so bizarre because it's like what we think of sci-fi aliens to look like, which is like, whoa, was that just all based on real shit? Yeah. Like somebody saw it and then we made up a bunch of stories throughout decades and decades, and we're like, no, there's no way if they're real that they look like that. It's like, no, that's what inspired the stories. We're not that creative, right? So that, and then the other through line is U.S. government will absolutely fucking show up.
Yeah.
And how do you explain that if it's not a threat? Like, how does the U.S. government show up every goddamn time if it's not a threat?
Right. Exactly. Like, even if you, like...
They're making that up, too? They're making up that military personnel? You know what I mean? Like...
Well, look at the moment of contact thing, when they were just like matter of factly, he's like, oh, yeah, the Americans, there was an American military plane here. And then in the middle of the night, they took off with the bomb.
Yeah.
And then it's like the Australia thing, that's back in 60s. Same thing happened. So, obviously... 40s happened, and they realized, oh shit, this is a thing. The theory is that it's based off of us practicing with the nuclear bombs in the middle of the Nevada desert because Roswell was right near one of these training areas where they were doing this, one of these practice areas. Yeah. Then you had Hiroshima and Nagasaki, an crazy uptick of these, because if it is they're living with us in the same space on a different dimension, they're like, hey, it's us too. That kind of fits in too. So say all of it's true, and it's like, it kind of fits in like, if you do blow up the planet, it affects our world as well because we're living with you here peripherally on a different plane. That would make sense as well if you're willing to go that far. You know, whatever it is.
As to why these spikes happen post World War II.
But is the nukes? The nukes
right. Yeah. But as a reason for why, like, there was a clear spike of incidents. Late 40s and then through the 50s, and
it seems like they come in clusters, right?
During the Cold War time, I think there was also right.
When you got close to nuclear war, there was a bunch of them. There was the 80s. There's a lot, and they had that. They talk about in the phenomenon. The bunch of those military guys got together and they just did like a press conference at like a hotel in like 90 something. And this guy Robert, he's involved in it still. I forget his something with an M. He was just like the night watchman. I think he was in the middle of Montana at one of these nuke sites. And he had a giant orange ball just show up above the thing. And he was down in the facility. And he gets a call from the gate and the guy's freaking the fuck out. He doesn't know what to do. Yeah. And the things, I think they armed the missiles for like 10 seconds. And then it just shut back down, whatever it is. Almost to show you like, hey, we can fuck with you. This is dangerous.
We
Like,
can
whatever
turn
it
your
is.
shit on and off.
I can turn it on and off at will, which makes you think like, so it's like, that's why another thing that I think, and my theory is that I think it's also a lot of time it's consciousness based. That's why there's multiple things that make me realize this. I think in order to see these things, you do have to be on a certain wavelength, because one of the things is like some people see them when you do see one, a lot of times people see multiples in their life. I think when it comes to like consciousness is like radio stations, and if you're on this certain radio station of consciousness, you're able to kind of check
Like
these things out even in
That's fascinating. That's like being able to spell asparagus in your pee. You know, only
right.
only certain people could do it.
Because, dude,
but if you can do it, you always do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
One of the authors of that article is this woman named Leslie Kane, who she also did the Surviving. You should watch this. Speaking of ghosts, watch Surviving Death on Netflix. It's pretty nuts. You'll love it, Ken.
I feel like you're mentally just ruining me.
But
Like,
here's the thing.
I can't wait to go watch.
Leslie Kane, she wrote a book where it was all. I'll find out the name of it. I'll send it to you guys. It's all anecdotal stuff. She wrote it like 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And it's all generals and military officials and whatever else. Their stories with UAP, and she has multiple stories about one. There's an Iranian fighter pilot that chased one of these things up until he like ran out of oxygen. Like he went like so far up, and then at one point he was going to try to fire his guns, and his machine his guns went off, like they got switched off somehow. Whatever it was, it all happens all the fucking time, right? But the thing that makes me think it's consciousness based is that there was one. I listened to that podcast, and somebody called up, and they seemed on the level, and they said that one time him and his girlfriend were at their apartment, and they said outside this giant bright light just happens right outside their window. They open up the shades, they look up. He sees this like circular thing with multicolored lights around it. Mm-hmm. She sees a cigar shaped object with like just white and blue or something, whatever it is. So they were both looking at the same exact spot and saw two different things.
Oh,
which is why it makes me think that like these things present themselves different to different people, or whatever it is. And like I think it's just this weird thing that's just based off consciousness. But like you know, it lives in our reality. But that's also part of the reason maybe you only see it at times, because it's coming in and out of our reality. You know?
It does also explain because whenever you get into these, like whenever government or whenever they go public with like, okay, this, you know, we're not really sure, or somebody comes out, they're always like trying to find a motive, right? Which of course we wouldn't know a motive. We're not talking to them, but like that what you're saying there, that like this is actually the space that they inhabit. Like that actually that explains the motive. It's like they didn't find a reason they didn't come here to study. They're here. This is where they are.
Yeah.
They and maybe they just like fucking with us a little bit sometimes.
Right. When I forget,
why wouldn't you? If that was us and we found out some
you
inferior,
make them sound like the like impractical jokers. Like
yeah. But wouldn't you, like, okay, if you had the ability to fucking invisible man yourself and unveil, like if you would do it, you would absolutely do it. Sometimes you'd be like, let me go check on those little fucking things, and then every once in a while you'd be like, hey, it's me, bye. And like human nature, we would fuck with that other being, or at least pop in to see what they're doing, especially if we felt like whatever they were doing could negatively affect us. We would check on them, maybe every once in a while show ourselves.
Well, even if you look at, so that's why we talked about the one thing about like it being like it's a phenomenon that can just show up. So just to, because of all the drone stuff that's going on, I don't know if that's how me and Ken got into it on text. I know that I'm into this stuff, but all the drone people are saying, like, immediately people, some UFO people are like, oh, it's them mimicking drones, and it's the phenomenon presenting itself as drones. And I'm like, maybe, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's us. I think it's our military. But I also think it's our military showing us technology we didn't know that they had, and they had.
Sure.
Yeah. But
I've seen a bunch of I've seen the drones, and at no point did I think I was seeing something like otherworldly.
Right. The one thing that
and their lights, apparently the lights that blink on the drones are in accordance with FAA regulations.
Right, exactly.
So I don't think like an alien design is,
Right.
And you're referring to in New Jersey, Drones Over Jersey, which is a great band.
Yes.
That's so you're referring.
I heard they opened it for Fountains of Wayne. I'm pretty sure they do.
Right. So
the sky over my house the other night when I was texting you, Sean. I walk the dog a couple times a night.
Yeah.
/ smoke a joint. But I probably saw 20 of them, between 2 dog walks.
Pre or post joint.
Yeah. How many of these were mushroom induced drones?
I huffed paint, and I saw a bunch of them. Right after I huffed a bunch of paint, I was like, I can't believe there's so many.
One of them is Shaquille O'Neal just sitting on one.
But my neighbors have all seen. One of my next door neighbors was telling me he saw one not much higher than our roof line, which has only got to be like 50 feet off the ground, 100 feet off the ground.
That's crazy.
He said he could have hit it with a baseball.
If
he has a good arm.
The next night, my stepdaughter saw the same thing. She said she was walking home and there was one hovering right over the roof line above her.
How big? Or like what was it doing?
Like the size of a car. They both had the exact same story.
Yeah.
Without me, I never told my stepdaughter.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt that the drones are fucking there. I mean, it's just everyone's seeing them. But yeah, to think that those are related because like when you think about every story of UFO, it's the exact opposite stories of the UFOs. Like they present themselves, but then they fucking take off at unbelievable speeds, like 2,000 miles per hour. Where like these things are just fucking like they're just like the way you would think of drones. Like they're going and by the way, we have crazy we know drones can do crazy things. Like we literally will conquer a fucking whole city in the Middle East with drones.
Yeah.
Like we'll just they're like bombing fucking like weddings and shit. Like I mean crazy shit has happened with we know they can do a lot but with remote control. So whatever now the motive is the other thing. Again, like what's the motive?
The motive of the rumor with the drones that I think that what's happening because of the drone sightings is that people are what they're saying is like some of it's just straight up planes. Like they have pictures of you're like you can just it's the shape of a plane. People are like it was a drone. It's like it's not.
Yeah.
But then because of everybody's looking up right now, like legitimate. Like I don't know. I think I told you about this, Ken. Like ABC News filmed like an orb that was way up for like 30 seconds. Like I have the video, and it's
we're
like
just catching things as we're looking up.
It's not a drone. And then but that's another thing that'll happen. People see Krantz, and they also see these light orbs that they have tons of pictures that you can't. It's like this thing that has a kind of a defined outside, it looks like a plasma inside with like a dot in the middle. It looks kind of like, and it could just be a faraway star maybe or a planet, but apparently you can't record those in daytime, whatever it is. But middle of the day, ABC News probably like a week ago filmed this orb. At the same time, I'll get like these Reddit UFO things, and this guy presented. He's like, "Here's my story. I'm a 61-year-old guy. I'm an avid photographer. I took this picture with a Nikon, here's all the info for the camera. Here's what I saw zoomed in, and it just looks like this. It looks like Starry Night almost. Like it looks like just like this pinwheel version of it just looks like a star material, but like spread out with some parts more defined. But it's not a craft. It's not a drone. And this guy was like, I did this at this time at this location. Here's the metadata for the photo, so you know it's completely for real.
Yeah.
And you can't. That's what people talk about when they talk about phenomenon. They're like, what is this thing? And then somebody's like, it's a blurry shot of a planet. I'm like, it's not a planet unless the planet's mid blowing up because it's all pixelated. So I'm like, but it's like one of the clearest shots. I'll send it to you guys. One of the clearest shots I've seen of these things because normally it's so far away. You see these videos of them, they just look like they look like just little assholes in the sky. Well, that's kind of what they look like. They just look like little tiny dots of light. And
wouldn't that be a disgusting letdown if that's what actually UFOs were just giant fucking gaping assholes? That's how they beam you up. It's just through the anal probing story comes from you get sucked into an asshole.
You brought up Sean. You brought up the movie Fire in the Sky before.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a more terrifying alien abduction filmed, like just a fictional movie.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't.
The last act of that movie is
crazy.
the first 2 acts are boring.
Yeah.
But the last act of that movie is fucking terrible. When you see what happens to him,
Yeah.
oh, it's fucking
And
terrifying.
he like fights him and stuff. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. And they he's now this is a guy. So you hear his story. People do believe that his story, but he's been working in the UFO circuit for years. He goes and does these appearances. Because you hear about that, and but he's still not making much. He just doesn't have to do whatever construction job he had anymore, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when you hear about that, you're like, the longer it goes, the more you're like, I don't buy it. So I was watching that show, How To with John Wilson. You ever seen How To with John Wilson?
Yeah, great. It's great. Yeah.
And there's one of the episodes. This guy Travis is in it, and I forget what the crux of the episode is, but at the end, at one point, the guy Travis gives his whole story, and John Wilson's like, "Oh, okay, all right," and then at the end, they show John paying him like $300 for the thing, and I was like,
that the Flat Earth episode?
It probably. But
Yeah.
I
It's
think
very
it was,
funny.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I get you, but it doesn't mean that he's bullshitting you. It just means that he's
Right.
like, it's like $300.
Means he needs money.
$300.
Also, that's like a built-in joke. That's like a John Wilson built-in joke. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like because that whole show is about like showing you like real fucking mundane or crazy things, and then the John Wilson spin on it, which is pretty genius.
Yeah. So what it boils down to is like, I don't know, man. I just think there's
fucked.
way too much of it. I think that when you look at the motive of some of these people, like even you look at the Grush, and then you look at Fravor, and then you look at dude, put it this way, from what I heard, because I know the guys, so I became friends with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, who George Knapp was responsible for breaking the Bob Lazar story back in '89. But Bob Lazar went to him and he interviewed Bob under cover, with the lighting and the I don't know the voice, but the lighting. And things that Bob Lazar said back then in '89 with George Knapp, that people were like, he's a crackpot, he's trying to get attention, he's in his 20s, whatever it is. He's never changed his story. And things that he's said has come true now. So he made in Corbell made a documentary about Bob Lazar, and he's like, there's one point where Bob Lazar mentioned this device in the 80s that when you go into this S4, this Area 51's secret spot, there's a thing that it identifies you by measuring the bone density in your hand. And he was like, that people thought he was batshit for saying it back then, but now he's like, here, I have a photo of the machine, and if you look it up now, it's a real thing. He also said that in order to power this craft, because he was hired to try to reverse engineer these things, because he was this insane physicist guy, and they said, he goes, well, there's a certain element, it's called, I forget the name of it, and in the 80s, they're like, that doesn't even exist, and then 10, 15 years later, it's now on the elemental chart. They discovered it. But he said the name back when he was being interviewed about all the craft stuff. So now he's like, you would need so much of this element to power one of these things. And and he was right about that even existing years later. So it's stuff like that. It's also, but then also he comes off a little weird, stuff like that. But when it comes to guys going in front of Congress and they're serious people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't see people doing that just for whim. I don't see that happening.
No, you saw career military people and or people that have been brought on to study these. This is not a good look for you.
Right.
Exactly. In your life, right? This is not a thing you want to be associated with. Like you said, there's not really people making money from it. It's so deep. We are so deep into sci-fi lore as a culture that if you said I saw a flying disc, people would if you were making that up, people would be like, you can't even be fucking creative enough to come up with something new, something more Cloverfield-ish. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Cloverfield didn't look like Godzilla. That was creative. Why don't you do something like that now? Why would you say it looks like the things that we thought sci-fi writers of the 50s were making up? It's because sci-fi writers of the 50s didn't make it up.
No,
is the thing, right?
I think Kenneth Arnold was the first guy to see him, and he was a pilot, and then he was a vet as well, and they have in the phenomenon, and that's where they got Foo Fighter was during the war, but Kenneth Arnold, Flying Saucer was Kenneth Arnold. And he saw
Yes.
it. And it was
Yeah.
flying saucer. Yeah.
Did you imagine how annoyed the aliens were when we started flying? They're like, God damn it. It's been so easy this whole time.
This is our
They've just
space.
been,
Yeah.
they've
why
just been
they're-
down there. They were just
That's why
eating
they're-
fruit and shit off the floor.
That's why they're probing us. We cause traffic.
Yeah, you're like, wait.
There's like
Yeah.
a million planes. Just
Yeah,
like
there's
this
a parallel to like
passive-
living in LA. It's the same idea.
passive aggressive sodomy just based off road rage.
You want it up here? How about it go down there? Yeah. Sean, thanks so much for coming on, man. This is
course.
horrifying. And listen, if Sean disappears, we know why.
Yeah,
Right? You know too much. You're deep, dude. You're deep in this.
If a government
I'm deep in
official shows up at our door over this podcast, I'd be like, holy shit, someone's
Someone's
listening?
listening. Yeah.
We got a listener? It was fucking wild.
I would literally say to the guy,
Can you review us?
Can you comment? Yeah. Can you leave a comment? Because I've been having a hard time getting listener comments. Can you just...
really killing it with your core audience, the CIA.
Yeah, it's like NASA. NASA's got a very popular social media. Can they retweet us or something?
Sean, do you have anything coming up you want to promote to the government?
Just listen to my podcast. It's called Burbs Bros. It's me and Dan St. Germain. We're from the burbs. We do crazy suburbs news stories. Besides that, no road stuff. Just I'm going to be in Pennsylvania and stuff like that. But yeah, follow me on Instagram at Shawnee Time if you can. That'd be fantastic. But
We'll
most
link all your
importantly,
stuff too in the
Podcast,
description.
yeah, podcast Burbs Bros. Follow that.
Cool. Sean, thank you so much. Sean Donnelly, everyone. And it's
Thank
a bit
you,
too much
guys.
podcast
Thanks.
on all the
for doing
socials.
it,
Thanks
Sean.
so much, dude.